the camera, but I think it's probably for the best all round. And I think just before we get sort of kick in, I think, you know, Jack's exactly right. Obviously this week we had the labour market stats through. I think the headlines that I'm sure many of you will have picked up already, but just a few of those that sort of really struck home for us. Obviously for young people aged 16 to 24, the employment rate from May to July was 52.7%. That's down nearly 3 percentage points since December to Feb 2020. The unemployment rate for those young people is 12.7%. That's up just about a percentage point since 2020. And economic inactivity, again, that's probably the area you were honing in on in particular, Jack, wasn't it? Sort of around just under 40%. So that's up sort of just under 3 percentage points since December to Feb 2020. So as Jack rightly says, there is a wider contraction happening. Obviously, those sort of changes are mirrored in the kind of all age population, and certainly what we are observing more broadly is beginning to be concerning. I think it always was. You know, obviously, kind of anyone who is out of work and certainly out of work for any length of time is a worry, and we want to make sure we support people back into employment and those vacancies that exist as soon as we reasonably can. But obviously, you know, there does appear to be the beginnings of a labour market contraction happening. Certainly those vacancies that are out there, sort of, you know, just sort of, you know, starting to tick down. And I think certainly the conversations we are having internally is that, you know, it's not as easy saying, you know, there's a million odd people kind of in the intensive work search regime, there are a million odd vacancies. That means, you know, kind of those two numbers match. We know that they don't necessarily do that, and certainly kind of that's something that we are watching hard on. And I suppose for us, it really brings home the importance of what's happening across the youth offer overall. That certainly is a mainstay of the Job Centre Plus delivery offer. Obviously, we were sort of, you've seen in spring budget, obviously the confirmation that we'll continue with that offer through to obviously 2028, but certainly for our purposes to the end of the Parliament, you know, being that priority, and certainly youth hubs being a central part of that. We're also beginning the expansion of the youth offer. So I think very imminently we will begin expanding, as was also said in the spring budget, the youth offer to a sort of a wider cohort of sort of claimants within universal credit. That will begin, say, yeah, sort of very imminently. I'm not sure I'm allowed to officially say out loud because obviously there's various announcements, things like that around that. But we do want to make sure that obviously as many young people as possible that are part of that sort of claimant regime are able to access those elements of the youth offer, and the hubs in particular we think will be, you know, increasingly important as we bring in a sort of a more diverse cohort of young people into sort of, you know, the active support space. Primarily for those groups, it will be a mixture of voluntary engagement. So kind of we're making sure that we're building up that work coach capability to make sure that they are sort of, you know, making sure they're extolling the virtues of actually what young people and the additional support young people could receive if they choose to participate in the youth offer. And for us, as I say, hubs are very central elements of that and continue to be. So I'll sort of just crack on with sort of just sort of youth hubs and sort of local youth support, and again there'll be space for questions if that's all right, Jack, at the end on sort of any of the sort of the macro issues, but also kind of as it relates to more directly to youth hubs. So we'll just move on to the next slide if that's all right, please, Jack. So, as I say, as you know, as I was reiterating, but, you know, so youth offer, as you guys will well know, was initially created in 2020 during the pandemic. It was part of that broader plan for jobs, and it's worth pointing out here that the rationale for continuing it is as true now as it was then. So, you know, really, you know, we were concerned about young people being at greater risk of the scarring effects of an economic downturn. And you guys as practitioners will well know that a lengthy period out of work at the beginning of your labour market sort of journey, you know, sort of kind of the sort of boring nomenclature that we use in our department, but actually we know that that can be scarring and actually have lifetime impacts on young people. people as well. So as young people are making that transition into employment, we want to make sure that that is as smooth as it reasonably can be. Those transition points are particularly tricky, aren't they, for our young people, as they're kind of often leaving education and sort of coming into sort of trying to find a job and moving forward that way, or for those young people who aren't successful straight away and do sort of turn to the benefit system, we want to make sure that tailored support is there. And as I mentioned, youth hubs are one of the sort of key components of that youth offer. And for us, a youth hub is a place where obviously DWP, but more importantly, a range of partners come together in a location to provide services to help young people. And thinking about that through the lens of their sort of holistic needs. And you guys will have heard me sort of bang on, as I do to my team ad nauseum, was doing with the minister last night, but kind of joined up local service delivery, we all know is what makes a difference, particularly for young people with complex needs and challenges. So that's really important for us to have that national network, and it's to have that national network of with sort of, as I say, sort of that joined up delivery at its core, I think is one of my prouder moments in the many years I've been at this social policy game. So I'm really kind of thankful to everybody who has enthusiastically taken on board sort of the sort of the mission here, and obviously kind of building out from work that many of you are already having trained, but allowing sort of DWP and Job Centre Plus work coaches to be part of that as well. And as you know, youth hubs offer a range of services, skills, training, employment focused support, obviously delivered by that work coach, but supplemented and complemented by the range of partners that we're working with in those sites and areas, again based upon the needs of the local area and the young people in that local area. And that's something again that we're thinking sort of in earnest around sort of what more we need to do to evolve, and I think that's what we'll want to just pick up on today. So just moving on, please, Jack. So as I say, yeah, I think just reiterating that point that I've just made. So young people's needs will vary, as you guys will know, sort of depending on where they live, their own individual circumstances, and that youth hub sort of operating in, as it says here, in that those range of settings will mean that we should have sort of targeted local services that are reflective of the needs of the young people in those areas. As I mentioned, the local organisations and the knowledge and expertise that those partner organisations have is so important to making sure that we have we're able to move those young people forward in a way that works best for them. And certainly for us, there's job centres aren't as quite as stark as they used to be back in my day, sort of my younger years, or certainly when I was part of a New Deal for Young People, actually, when I was sort of pretending to write my thesis, and actually sort of fell into the civil service. But actually, we do know that actually that environment outside of the job centre is so much more conducive to engagement. And countless sort of times I've sort of been out and about and sort of on visits and speaking to work coaches, speaking to partners, and actually the stories they're saying is actually we struggled, certainly from the work coach perspective, we struggled to get traction to kind of have that young people really engage with us, sort of understanding their motivations and what they want to achieve. It wasn't until we took them out of that environment and obviously kind of had a more a sort of direct conversation outside of that job centre that really got underneath actually their motivations, and they were willing to open up. And that's something we want to make sure we're sort of continuing with. And as I say, hugely grateful to all the partner organisations and many of you on the call, because obviously the hubs, they aren't DWP youth hubs, although kind of that's obviously kind of the name that we use. They are very much partnership hubs, where we're working with you to better support our young people. Okay, next slide, please, Jack. So yes, as I mentioned before, kind of the youth hubs will be, very much an integral component of that sort of, as I mentioned, that spring budget announcement to expand the youth offer, bringing more young people into the fold. As I mentioned, only those searching for work have been eligible to participate, but bringing more young people in that universal credit sort of cohort into the hubs, we think will be hugely beneficial. And obviously it's all three prongs of the youth offer. So the sort of youth employment programme, which gives access to sort of lots of support, including our sector-based work academies and all sorts of other mentoring, etc. But also the youth employability coaches who are there to support those young people with particularly sort of complex needs and challenges. And those work coaches have been empowered really to spend bit more time, smaller caseloads with those young people that have particular particular difficulties. But those hubs certainly will be a key component of that. And beyond this, I think, as it rightly says here, we are, as you would expect, looking to continuously improve in this space. So thinking about how we refine our suite of support for young people, making sure that those right support, right person, right time is very much the mantra for us, and very much applies in the hub space. And we really want to sort of listen to and receive feedback from organisations like yourselves who are helping and already working actively with young people on the ground to help drive up this support. But for me, there's something about we're at an interesting point in the youth hub sort of journey. So from that initial setup phase, and those of you that were around in 2020 will recall that we had sort of big ambitions for youth hubs, and obviously COVID meant that we're kind of in a bit of a dance with kind of virtual and hybrid hubs, and actually looking to actually get out there and sort of get those physical hubs in place. There's some really good work and engagement from organisations like ERSA, and particularly Impetus as well. I've mentioned around sort of the blueprints, and certainly the conversation I had with the minister, we'll say yesterday, day before, I don't know, sort of seeing her every day at the moment, but was very much sort of, she's a judicious advocate, as many of you will know from hearing her speak, for the youth hubs, and it's great to have a supportive minister on this front. And she is, like us, really keen to sort of get into the next phase, I suppose, around how we evolve the hubs to make sure they are fit for purpose, that, as we have a deeper understanding of the needs of our young people in areas. And as we mentioned at the top, and as Jack mentioned as well, that, where, we do have more challenges coming through actually for our young people. We know how difficult COVID was for many of our young people and that generation that started to come through, notwithstanding those young people who perhaps weren't able to benefit from a kickstart or other opportunities. Sort of that increasing number of young people who are sort of on the books for a bit longer than I think we would all like. So thinking about how the hub can really be that holistic sort of support venue is really important for us. We'll just move on to the next slide, Peter. So really our challenges here. So how we can encourage youth hubs to open in areas that currently don't have one, and certainly where there might be need. There is a little bit of seed money within sort of the Job Centre Plus sort of grant space as well. So real opportunity for us to think harder about actually, do we have hubs that meet that need across the country? And again, we've been doing, and sort of Amy on the call as well, been doing some mapping work just to understand actually what our landscape looks like. And I guess the second challenge, how we bring more partners into youth hubs. So we have been sort of driven by obviously the kind of what's available in local areas, certainly with the partners that are sort of keen to work with us. But there is also a broader question for us around actually how we do we need to be more reflective of things like obviously mental health and other aspects that are coming through, and evaluation is starting to tell us a bit more about the range of services, and obviously the kind of the monitoring work around that's offered in hubs. But again, do we want to, I don't want to say standardize, but do we want to think about actually there are some benchmarks that we think it would be useful for hubs to hit to make sure that we are delivering that holistic support? And in that similar vein, what can we do to further enhance what youth hubs offer? I'll just mention quickly, there was a cross-government ministerial meeting just before summer recess that Mims Davies and sort of her DFE and DCMS and all sorts of other sort of cross-government ministers were part of. That's really part of the, certainly our minister, sort of Mims Davies' ambition, and certainly working, as I say, with Halford and Minister Andrews in DCMS to bring together and better coordinate activity as it relates to young people across government, which is an oft made and probably fair challenge, I think, in terms of how we bring there's lots of good activities certainly we are involved in, with Home Office on serious violence, with DFE on sort of all things around skills and care leavers and all sorts of other areas. But actually bringing together that forum in a way was really helpful. And our first meeting focused on place, and again we want to think we had some good contributions, so from colleagues across government, including DHSC, for example, who are really keen to think about actually what more we can do around testing the sort of mental health support and whether sort of, that kind of activity happening in the hub space more consistently is something that we might want to lean into. Similarly, thinking, from DCMS perspective, thinking about libraries, for example, we've got some really good hubs. I know I sort of a pioneer hub in sort of Birmingham, the West Mids, is in that central library venue, and many others are. But how, where we are already, government is thinking about, and local government thinking about how you coalesce services in a place, actually how we can make better use of that opportunity. I know government has a habit really to sort of just, have a good idea and then sort of, create a hub attached to it. Actually, probably we want to think a bit harder about actually what are the benefits of co-location, and what could that mean actually when we think about that through the lens of actually the people that we're here to serve. So I think that brings me to the end, and I'm already seeing a range of questions in the chat. But Jack, I'll hand over to you to be compare, keep us in check on all that.
Thank you very much, Tammy. That was a really informative presentation. I'll kick us off with some questions from the chat, and then if anyone wants to put their hand up, I can come to you afterwards. So Susan has asked if the length of time allowed in the youth hub will be extended beyond 26 weeks, and I think they work specifically with SEND participants in Sheffield, and they might need more than 6 months to overcome complex barriers.
So at the moment, and this is something actually I've been reflecting with the team, the sort of quotes normal rules will apply, I'm afraid, Susan. But actually, what we do have the opportunity to do, because we are sort of phasing the expansion, we want to do a bit of test and learn in this space. So I think there's a genuine opportunity, and I'll ask Amy just to take that one away. We'll all sort of add that to our list of reflection points, actually, as to kind of whether there are categories of young people that actually we want to think about, once you have begun that engagement, then, does it make sense to kind of, I think it probably does, even as I say it out loud, to kind of maintain that engagement in that hub space and give that additional flexibility, so to, allow those outcomes really to kind of flow through. So if that's what, let me take that one away, Susan, and we'll come back to you on that.
And then the other two questions in the chat, I'm going to sort of shoehorn together because I think it's the crux of probably what a lot of people are thinking on this call. And that's a funding question in terms of what funding is going to be made available for the expansion. And the sort of follow-up question to that is there any scope for this, including sort of already available UK SPF money locally?
Jack, I'm really sorry. The hospital is just phoning me. Bear me half a second and I'll come back to you straight away. I just don't make sure I don't miss this. I'll be back.
No worries at all.
No,
just in the meantime,
no, it's all right. No, they've gone. Hopefully it's all right.
gone.
I'm due to have a little minor op, so hopefully not phoning me again to say actually that's kind of gone into the kind of 2025 ether. I'm sure they'll come back. But no, I say we do have some funding available to support expansion of the hubs. I mean, it's worth recalling that we want to make sure that the hubs really are enduring spaces, I suppose. So even though there is sort of upfront funding available, primary linked setup costs, there are limitations to the extent that can be ongoing. Now, as I say that out loud, we are at an interesting inflection point, aren't we, in terms of government potential activities in that space. So I think as far as sort of the spend, this current administration is concerned, as I say, we do have some additional funding available, primarily for setup costs. The ambition would be to kind of, how do we make sure that hubs can be sort of sufficient in and of themselves? And I think it's exactly right. Actually, I was in having a youth hub not so long ago, where we're just about to have that announcement around UK SPF and the people and skills pillar. So there is genuinely an opportunity to use some of those sort of additional local funding vehicles where local authorities are able in and of themselves. Oh, sorry, they're back again. I'll hold that thought.
Just in the meantime, whilst we've lost Tammy, I'm going to circle back to the challenges she outlined. We're going to pick some of these up at the end in our discussion. There's going to be a Mentimeter sort of page, and on some of these questions, we'll get some responses from you, which we'll keep at ERSA and sort of try and convey that in the conversations we have. So obviously start having a think about that as the meeting progresses. If anyone does want to put their hand up, I'm happy to bring people in to ask Tammy questions, or you can put them in the chat. Thanks, Andrew. I'll come to you just after we've asked Tammy Debbie's question in the chat.
Hello, sorry chaps, I'm back. Surprisingly, they're bringing my procedure forward, which is so hot off the press. I wasn't expecting that at all. But yeah, so I think so there is, as I say, sort of seed funding available, sort of through the Flexible Support Fund. Many of you have been through that grant application process with DWP. The expectation is that wouldn't necessarily be an enduring arrangement, but I think if in doubt, I think the best thing to do is to kind of continue that engagement with your local partnership leads around actually kind of whether and what additional funding might be available and for what purposes that funding is available, and we can explore that in earnest with you. But I would really encourage all of you, as I say, that was a conversation I was having with Haringey as well around people and skills and sort of that being part of UKSPF. It was a slightly clunky decision. It was sort of very quickly made, wasn't it? And I know lots of local areas had already made their sort of priorities around UK SPF and funding for year 2. But if young people aren't part of that people and skills pillar and aren't already prioritised, and I would really encourage you guys to, there is the leverage and the flexibility for local areas to do so. And notwithstanding that, there will be sort of obviously other sort of small funding pots available around and about, not necessarily sort of directly from government, but certainly through some of the other realms as well. So yeah, I think encourage you to do that. Again, if you're having problems, do feel free to come via ERSA. Jack, feel free to kind of sort of send inquiries through to us, and I think Amy, who's on the call as well, and sort of me and my team, happy to explore that in more detail.
Fantastic. Yeah, and sort of just one last question on funding. Sort of the question of reapplying or the opportunity to reapply for renewal funding for already set up. I know you said there'll be a focus on setting up new locations, but I think there's a concern that already successful locations might not be able to secure their funding past the end of 2024.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, again, if sort of colleagues, I think Debbie in particular, if you want to sort of, sort of just make, come through via us, Jack, do feel free to pass on, then we can have a look at that and sort of just, make sure we've understood the rationale that's been applied and whether there's any flexibility that might be able to come to bear there.
Fantastic. So on that note, I'll bring in Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question around what you were saying about expanding eligibility for youth hubs. So I think you said expanding access to more young people kind of receiving universal credit. I wondered if you could just say like which groups of young people would that include? And then on this sort of relatedly on the same kind of point around eligibility, and I think Paul asked this in the chat as well, what's the kind of current position on eligibility for youth hubs for young people outside the social security system, so not claiming benefits? Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so first question. So the initial expansion will be happening in sort of in a bit of a phased approach, really. So the first groups that we'll be targeting are those who are could have a sort of work focused interviews and work prep. So those are the 2 cohorts that will be coming through sort of imminently into the fold, and that's a relatively small total number. I think in around about the low tens of thousands. I'm just making sure I've sort of the slightly mucus brain sort of struggling to remember the sort of exact numbers, but that they're a relatively small group who already have an assigned work coach attached to them, and for whom we'll want to make sure that that work coach is really making sure that those young people in the work preparation and work focused interview regimes are able to benefit from the additional support the youth offer can provide where they choose to engage with that. And certainly, as I say, we're making sure that we are building up the guidance and all the comms as you'd expect with those Job Centre Plus teams to make sure that we have the right sort of conversations, I guess, with young people that are there. We are having to work through in a bit more detail those other groups, so the kind of the light touch, out of work and other cohorts, just because there's a bit of a more of a challenge in terms of the functionality. Those are groups that don't already have a work coach assigned to them, so there's a bit more that's needed to work through that. We're hoping to get moving on that group, and that's the much larger cohort, as soon as we can, and certainly when we have more to say on timings for that, we'll come back to this group, certainly, for sure. I'm just looking at the numbers in the region of just under 70,000 additional young people in that phase one will be offered the opportunity to engage with the youth offer. In terms of non-claiming NEETs, I think, I'm sorry, just a big exhale from me, because like you guys, they are the group that probably I am most worried about, if I'm totally honest. Not all non-claiming NEETs we know will kind of be looking to actively sort of get into work, or might have being looked after with family, or might have good and genuine reasons for being in that position. But as we know, as you guys all know, there are far too many young people who are just disengaged, and increasing numbers of them that are disengaged that could be fulfilling their education or sort of work potential, but for whatever reason are not. We are keen to explore, and I'm conscious, my team are probably on the call sort of getting slightly miffed with me, but we're keen to explore whether and to what and how we could potentially expand support in hubs where those locations are suitable to non-claiming NEETs. And I think for us, we probably need to do a bit more. And I think if there are colleagues on the call who have hubs that they think could be sort of good, amenable venues for that kind of activity, then do feel free to get in touch, because I think this is probably about us testing the sort of effectiveness, I suppose, of that hub network, and also what it might mean in terms of access to work coach support, which obviously is a pretty high premium currency, given obviously we're funded through Treasury just to look after claimants. But there is some active thinking happening between DfE and sort of the top of government around sort of what more we must do to support young people, particularly those young people who are, as I say, in this category of concern. I think hubs do have a potential in this space, but notwithstanding, there's all sorts of other options that we might want to think about too. But for me, the main challenge is about reach. And I think, well, recognising that with lots of those European Social Fund initiatives sort of genuinely sort of coming to a final end, and perhaps not being continued as they were into the kind of UK SPF space, there is sort of a need to make sure that actually we are sort of sorry, gentle sneeze there, but making sure that we are sort of engaged and alive to that. So as I say, it's a live area of activity at the moment, where certainly we'll want to make sure that we play in thoughts and steers from colleagues such as yourself.
Thanks for that, Tammy. I'll bring in Rianne on that note to ask her question.
Hello, we just wanted to share a bit of our experience, really. So we run the Youth Hub in Plymouth. We had a 2-year contract with DWP that started in 2021. We finished that one, and what we've got is an online resource bank for kind of self-help that we offer to anybody age 16 plus, but also then we do the more specialist kind of skills action plans and one-to-one support for prioritising claimants, but also we've always supported non-claimants alongside it as well. Because we very much approached our Youth Hub with the thought that actually if you do the right things, you'll get the right results. And we've got really good working relationships with our DWP colleagues here in Plymouth, and we've been very transparent from the beginning that we've been helping everybody, because that preventative work has been really important as well. And actually, as we've moved through, we've been successful in securing an additional 1 year through DWP funding for our Youth Hub, to now focus in on claimants with more complex needs. So we're doing a lot to support young people with special educational needs, care experience young people in particular. And that really does involve we have our centralised hub where we're co-locating on top of Barclays Bank in the centre of the city centre here in Plymouth. But we have Youth Hub work coaches that get involved with us as well as like kind of a ream of partner activity. What we found is actually by working in citywide partnership with training providers, support organisations, local employers, we've been able to build kind of a working group of people that can dip in and out to support anybody 16 to 24. And here in Plymouth as well, this week we finally signed off our unlocking potential seat strategy, because we're looking at NEETs, those not engaging and looking at it more positively, for the people that are seeking opportunities for education, employment, and trying to do some targeted support there and to assist with that, because we have now got our Youth Hub coordinator focused more on these more complex cases and needing to spend more time with them and being able to give less time to our non-claimants. We have been able to access some more youth funding to have a kind of youth coordinator role that's going to be working more on the NEET seat agenda, hopefully starting with us in a couple of months' time to kind of strengthen that. And then thinking about that funding, all the funding questions coming through, certainly here in Plymouth, our plan is to continue our Youth Hub model via the shared prosperity funding for another year, because here in Plymouth, we're aware that we've utilised as much as we can of the SFF funding. We've tested things and piloted things, and we're now at a point where we want the Youth Hub to remain as part of the core service in Plymouth to actually, respond to the high numbers of NEET young people in the city, as well as the rising claimant numbers. But I just kind of wanted to pop it in because it seems like a lot of things are being discussed. And if anyone wants to have a talk with us about things that have worked and not worked, we're more than happy to share that with you.
Thanks a lot for that. That's sorry, Tammy, you go ahead.
No, sorry, Jack. No, I was just sort of gently groaning in agreement. Actually, man, thank you so much. There's a kind of what you just described is kind of, what certainly the way you can apply the model, isn't it, in terms of actually kind of, how you can expand out. I think, that's really what we had in mind when we were thinking about what UKSPF and the power that could potentially have in terms of supplementing this offer. Almost, I keep talking to my guys as the kind of youth offer as the foundation, and certainly hubs as the foundation that you can build out from and deliver that more enduring support for young people in area. And I think that sounds absolutely amazing. I'm sure many people will reach out to you. I'd quite like to come and say hello. So kind of, sort of, Jack, if that's all right, just to kind of pass contact details on as well. But yeah, I think, really, really positive. And I'm sure Rhiannon actually kind of, we'll get you back next time around, and less of me wanging on and more of you kind of talking in sort of a bit more detail about what you're up to. I'm sure will be really, really useful. That's amazing. Thank you, mate.
Fantastic. I think that kind of ties us quite nicely onto the next section of the forum. I just think on that, I know in my conversations that I've had with different Youth Hub conveners across the country, it is an idea that people have taken and run with, and what people are doing across the country is different and great for a number of reasons. And I think what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do in my work at ERSA, is connect that network of different youth hubs and ensure knowledge like what Rhianna's just shared is spread across the country, ultimately meaning that we could provide the best support possible. So thank you so much, Tammy. That was a great presentation and a great Q&A, and I think there will be a lot of people emailing me to pick up conversations with you. So I've put the policy email for ERSA in the chat. If you do want to be connected with Tammy, please do drop us a line, and we can sort that out for you. Moving on to the next section, we've got 3 different youth hubs who very kindly agreed to give us a brief overview of their provision, and then following that we'll open it up to the floor, and if you want to come in and talk about your provision or what's happening in your area, we're more than happy for you to do so. So first up we have Gary from Cumbria Youth Alliance, who's going to give us a brief overview of their youth hubs.
Yeah, thank you. So Cumbria Youth Alliance, we're based in Workington on the west coast of Cumbria, sort of between Carlisle. We cover the youth hubs in Carlisle. We help support the youth hub in Workington and in Whitehaven. What we found through the early days of the engagement in Workington, that the hub was centralised in an area where there was a real concentration of NEET young people unemployed, but quickly come to realise that there were clusters, pardon me, around the area of Allerdale, which is quite vast, that weren't able to access support within the actual youth hub itself. So we spoke to sort of area leads here in Cumbria, and applied and sustained some flexible support funding to actually bring in a dedicated team of outreach workers, so we could actually go out and deliver what we would do in the hub in Workington or the hub in Whitehaven or the hub in Carlisle out to those outlying areas. So giving young people who have real issues access and support because of, you know, issues relating to rurality, lack of public transport, you know, lack of opportunities in their local area. It gave them a chance to really engage with us and help them sort of realise an aspiration. Where there were perceptions of a lack of opportunity, it was trying to build that kind of, look, there are opportunities across a range of sectors that you maybe haven't thought about that are local to you. So it was kind of having sort of working sort of on outreach, going to village halls, going to local community centres, youth clubs, other bits of youth provision to try and engage with those young people, really looking to build an aspiration, working very closely initially one-to-one, and then bringing in some sort of, if you like, blended delivery. So as well as the one-to-one meetings where young people had access to the internet, you know, we could do Zoom and Teams, different engagement sessions. So bringing young people in just to come and do a social quiz or a supported social chat, just to kind of build confidence amongst young people, just talking, getting involved in groups. And then what we did, we took out training to those areas. So where we had clusters of young people, we actually took training out to them. So we'd go out and we would deliver different development sessions and a range of development programs to help sort of identify, address and overcome some of the barriers those young people were facing, linking in with local employers, bringing in employers to do, you know, Q&As around opportunities that they had within their organisations, bringing in actual workers as well to talk about their experiences working within sectors, within organisations. And what we actually found is getting some of the young people in front of those employers and making that direct contact, that direct link, actually opened up some opportunities for young people that may not have, you know, been able to access those opportunities through normal ways. You know, they maybe lacked those interview skills, you know, they maybe weren't very good at communicating in that kind of situation. But in an opportunity where they were in a group setting, talking and interacting with something, you know, whether it was a Scaffold the World type program where we bring an organisation in and they do like a team building kind of intervention, and getting them working with people from those different employer networks really did open up opportunities. Exploring different routes that young people hadn't maybe thought about. In Cumbria, very rural, you know, high sort of, you know, focus on hospitality. Retail's become a little bit more depressed in the area, but we looked at living opportunities for young people. So working in sort of hotels, in different accommodations around the county for living opportunities, and actually opened up real tangible jobs for people. And, you know, we've had people move into living work who are actually sustaining that and are actually doing really well. Yet previously had kind of looked and thought, well, I live in the middle of nowhere. There's actually nothing for me. And, you know, there were two young people in particular who were brother and sister, who were part of a family that had kind of become reliant on benefits. It had almost become like that's the way it was because they couldn't see any opportunities. So us being able to get out there and engage with those young people in a setting that was local to them and give them access to internet, support them with job search, help them look, really help drive that forward. You know, it was mentioned before about the impact of COVID, and, you know, we really have seen that there's been a knock-on impact of that around young people lacking social confidence. Some young people have become more and more self-isolated, you know, even sort of not going out to meet the friends, you know, and we've sort of worked really hard here at Youth Alliance to reintegrate young people into group activities, and and through the hubs, bringing in sort of partners who would look at issues around mental health or issues where we had a group of young people that were exploring their sexuality. So we have a partner that specialised in LGBTQ plus support. So we'd spoken to the running the working partner organisation to offer that support. We've done the same with mental health as well, where young people are struggling to access mental health support through the NHS. We've actually worked with a number of providers across Cumbria and actually provided funding to some of those organisations to be available for young people, to help them access that help and support, to really kind of help them cope with the situations they're in, develop strategies while they're waiting for that more specialist support if it's needed further down the line. Rurality in our area is a big thing, as I've said, and outreach was an answer. But for young people to still access opportunities, we found we used to put people through driving lessons and help them sort of get a full license. That's become more of a problem since COVID through provision. There are very few driving instructors out there who can take referrals at the moment. So we've actually got a few young people who've done their CBT, the motorcycle training, and it's a cheaper mode of transport for them to buy to open up some opportunities. So it has been more of a challenge since COVID, but we are sort of rising to that. And what we found is that blended approach, engaging with employers, utilising support of other partners, has been crucial to making a success of that hub structure. Possibly the only kind of real issue and barrier to that within the hubs can be the situation. So we do use libraries. The hubs here are set in libraries, or two of them are, and the issue with that might be space. And if we want to do a group activity, it's really difficult to deliver a group activity within the hub setting if you're really affected by available space or privacy, and not disturbing other people who want to use the libraries in general. So what we do, we kind of, as an organisation, we then would rent a space in Whitehaven, we'd rent a space in Workington or in Maryport, one of the other areas, and invite young people to group sessions that fall outside of the actual youth hub itself, but it's provision they can access in addition to that hub support. So that's a brief overview, and I hope I've covered things, but please feel free to ask questions.
Thanks, Gary. I think what we'll do is we'll just rifle through these three presentations we've got, and then we'll circle back to questions and discussions sort of at the end of the three of you, because I suspect anyway that you might all pick up on some similar points. So next up we have Brian from Merseyside Expanding Horizons.
Thank you. Are you seeing and hearing me okay, Jack?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, thanks ever so much for the invitation to the meeting and the opportunity to present. I share a lot of what Gary has said and agree very much with the work that's going up there in Cumbria. Gary, thank you for that. Our hub covers the borough of Sefton in Merseyside, which starts from Bootle, just outside Liverpool city centre, where I'm speaking from today, and we go all the way up the borough to Southport, where we neighbour with the borough of Lancashire. We have been running Youth Hub for 3 years nearly now, 21, 22 and 23. We're just at the point of renegotiating, hopefully for another round of funding for 23, 24 and 25. And we have been given some very positive noises about that, as long as we're on profile with our referrals, which I'm glad to say we are. So that's good to know, particularly in the context of the conversations we've just been having about sustainability and provision of the youth hubs going forward. I might come back to that, if I may, in a moment. What we do, we have taken 400 in the 22-23 contract. We've taken 495 as of yesterday young people into our youth hub. Our profile for the end of September is to get to 504. So that's great. We bring them in on we have a customer journey, or pathway as we call it, but they come to us on a customer journey. So let me just focus on journey and pathway. The journey here is that young people start it. It's a 13-week journey with their local job centre. What we've been doing though is wanting to involve young people who would benefit from the youth hub sooner rather than later. So in the case of the Bootle office and in Southport and Crosby coming into line with this, young people, when they make the claim and they have the important employment and skills review, which I'm sure colleagues will recognise that term, that actually takes place at the youth hub rather than at the job centre. So they're in here early doors, and the requirements, the obligations on them, the opportunities of the youth offer in the next 13 weeks are outlined, and we are introduced at that point as working in partnership with the job centre work coach, and we will describe the journey, or the pathway rather, that we will take the young person on. There's a couple of pathways we have, because we kind of segregate our delivery based on where we believe the young person is going and how quickly or otherwise they might be going into work. A lot of our young people, if you were to kind of categorize very broadly red, amber, green in terms of readiness for work, we're meant to be, like I think all of the youth hubs, working very much in the amber category. But we will have young people who are more red of amber and more of a greeny tinge of amber as well. And we want to be useful to all of them. So for some of our young people, they may just need to be helped with the all-important CV, but then think about their job search and interview approach, etc. But there will be others that need more intensive support, and obviously this is where availability for up to 6 months is very helpful. But we try and make an assessment as best we can early on. I say assessment, not judgment. They're different things, because what we want to be doing is tailoring the support to the young person that's most suitable for them, and focusing ourselves on what their particular needs are. So that customer pathway is reviewed after about 7 weeks of involvement with the youth hub here in Sefton. We will do a combination of one-to-one work. We will have group work with young people, particularly where we've got a group of young people on the books who are at a similar stage in their employment journey. We'll try and work with them in a group and be helpful to them in that respect, but underpin it all the time with one-to-one support. Gary mentioned about employers a moment ago, and I put a comment in the chat. For me, that is a vital purpose of the Youth Hub. I don't know whether colleagues feel the same, but we have a lot of young people, and it's got worse since COVID, no doubt about it. But they come in here with the wrong view of themselves and of employers. And they've convinced themselves even before they've come through the door, maybe because it's an easy option to convince yourself. And we need to kind of have a bit of tough love here and kind of challenge that view of what can I offer an employer? And going through the motions of applying on Indeed just to keep your work coach happy is, you know, not really helpful, is it? What our young people need to grasp is what they offer the world of work. And we try and encourage, dare I call it, might sound a bit grand this, I don't mean it to, but we try and encourage them to be entrepreneurial and to see themselves as a potential benefit and asset to an organization. So our conversations with young people are not just about what does the job involve that you're looking at, that you might apply for on Indeed. Will you have the experience and skills? Because the chances are they won't. And the chances are that their CV is going to be very limited, might just about manage to fill a page, and we'll spin it out as best we can. But a lot of our youngsters are potential employees who may be looking at their first role. And therefore, We want them to think not about the job only that they're applying for, but about the contribution that they can make to the organisation, because that we're finding locally. Employers, when they're meeting our young people, are accepting that they've not got a lot of experience, and they're not expecting that they will have experience that they don't have. What they do want to see is attitude and willingness to get in there and be part of the organisation and to make their contribution. And that word contribution, we use it every day. And we use it with our young people because actually we're saying to them, you have a contribution to make. And actually you have a responsibility to make a contribution. Now that might sound a little bit, but I do think that unless we are going to sort of challenge the thinking in a very caring way and a sensitive way, I don't really see what the point of youth hubs are. We're not just there to signpost. We're not just there to churn out CVs just so we can tick a box. We're there to actually move a young person forward in their thinking. And I believe, that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. Something that we've done, which we found really helpful, is what we call employer speed dating events. And we run them every month. We get the local employers in and we say, we've got young people here who are looking for work. We want you to do two things. We want you to tell them the reality of working for your organisation. So a local employer to us is ASDA, got Aldi around the corner as well. We want them to come in and tell our young people what are they looking for in employees, kind of referring to what I've just said. And at the same time, engage with the young people. And if they've got opportunities, for our young people to be able to apply, and we're finding that's very, very useful, and it needs work locally. It needs to happen, but we're in a position to do a healthy introduction, just like Gary's mentioned in Cumbria, to employers. Let me just make one more point. Co-location is vital. When the job centre work coaches come in here, what works well is if from the word go at the beginning of the 13-week journey, we are working together. The work coach is keeping the young people accountable, is monitoring their progress, but they are utilising and using us as best as they can. It doesn't matter if we're doubling up, it really doesn't matter if we're having similar conversations to the job centre. We can reinforce what each other's doing, and we can actually be two sides of the same conversation. And we found that it works well. I don't know whether other youth hubs, when you first started this, worried about how you were going to work alongside a job centre person in your premises. We worried about that. How is it going to happen? How will we be seen as distinctive yet complementary? I have to say, hand on heart, it has worked well. Why? Because we've adapted. And we've respected the journey that the job centre's taken the young people on. But the work coaches who are here have embraced what it is to be working in a different environment, in a different way, and stepping a bit away from our silos and meeting a bit more in the middle and playing to strengths. I think I should probably pause now because I'll be rabbiting otherwise. But I'm very, very happy to take any questions either in the chat or in the meeting, but we are convinced of where the youth hub is adding additional value. We're not doubling up on what's happening in the job centre. It's different, and there's things that we're able to do working in this collaborative way that wouldn't otherwise happen. And we're very, very concerned and keen that the youth hubs continue. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund is replacing ESF for us locally, and it's nothing like the level of funding that we had under ESF. And I mention that because it's significant now. ESF supplemented a lot of the work that we did in Youth Hub over the last 2 years. That's gone at the end of the year. And the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is going to be a lot less. So we need to be thinking about how we sustain this work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
That was equally as informative. Just quickly on the UK SPF point, obviously ERSA has been campaigning on UK SPF since the day after the Brexit referendum, and we continue to do so. We're doing some work with partners across the sector to try and make sure we make clear the issues with UK SPF, and I think especially for the kind of partnership organisations that you'd be bringing into youth hubs. I think the end of ESF is really hitting those organisations hard, and obviously that affects the offer that you can all put through in your youth hubs. So finally, last but not least, I'll pass over to Andrew from the platform in Blackpool.
Good morning, everyone. Yep, my name is Andrew Fletcher. I'm responsible for the platform, which is Blackpool's Youth Hub, delivered by Blackpool Council. I have spoken before, so I'm not going to go over the history and try and avoid some of the things I've spoken about previously. But there are some key differences with ourselves, and the main one being that we aren't funded by the DWP. We liked the idea, we didn't like the restrictions. So luckily at the time, Blackpool's getting some investment. We're currently funded through the Towns Fund. We have had funding through the CRF, and we are listed as a local priority for the SPF going forward. So we haven't had some of the handcuffs applied to the provision that others have had. With that, our current outcomes, we look at education, training and jobs, whatever is the next part of that young person's journey. And this presentation from me, it comes with a caveat that we're not perfect, we're still learning. There have been and continue to be a lot of challenges. But that said, I'm going to be focusing on more of our successes, but please know that it's not all that. But with that, if anyone ever wants to do a failures conference where we just learn from each other's mistakes, please do include me. I'd be up for that. But anyway, so we opened about 18 months ago. We had a hard launch in March 22, soft launch in the January. In this period, we worked with around, 848 young people, 223 into training or education, 234 into jobs, various sustainment. We work with 16 to 24-year-old Blackpool residents who are NEET or becoming NEET within the next 2 weeks, so a bit of preventative work there, and they do not have to be UC claimants. In regards to our setup, we've got our shop front in the town centre, which hopefully you can see behind me. I coordinate. I've got a senior employment advisor who supports the team in the building. I've got 3 employment advisors based in there. I've got 1 outreach employment advisor who delivers workshops, embeds in other organisations, as previously been discussed by Gary. We also have a dedicated care leaver employment advisor working with Blackpool's care leavers. And we carousel our staff into the job centre across 3 days, just to really build those relationships with the job centre staff and for those warm handovers within there. On my site, I've also got 4 DWP members of staff regularly. So I have the youth engagement coach for care leavers with me full time. So a lot of close working with our care leaver employment advisor, gives them direct access to the personal advisors, all that support under one roof, and it's working really well. We're able to challenge the mum and dad situation of mum said, dad said, because we're all under one roof. So that's been really, really effective for our care leavers. We have the deputy for the youth work coach team based with us on site. We've got 2 other extra members of staff, 1 dedicated and 1 on carousel. So when we're in the job centre, they send a member of staff over to us. So we have up to 4 members of staff with us. We've also got staff from the local college, Blackpool and Far College. It's the big college in the area. So 1 day a week, a member of their apprenticeship team comes down. They come down on Monday and they offer some IAG. They're there for support for staff. We again can do warm handovers for people who want apprenticeships or information about the college. We have a tutor who comes in on, well, it was Friday afternoons, now Thursday afternoons, delivering functional skills. And we provide the last line of IAG, which is especially important at the moment. We've got the colleges enrolling, we've got the 6-week window. So we're heavily involved in that with the college. And ultimately, we will be getting their leaver lists as well, so we can try and pick them up. Ultimately, the big sell was let me be your positive destination, so I can then get those leaver lists and try and make sure these young people that wanted to go to college can go somewhere, can do something. We also work closely with Blackpool Council's adolescent services, as you'd expect us being the council. So we support the leaving care personal advisors, and we support the NEET tracking teams with their statutory duty as well. So my outreach member of staff has done some of the door knocks, checking where people are up to, instant advice guidance, do you need support from us? So we're doing that on the doors as well. We do have delivery from other providers, but I'll touch on that in a bit. So with young people, we try to see them straight away. We have to. We don't use referral forms. So we decided early that when we opened, we didn't want a big stack of referral forms coming through, and we didn't want referral forms where we were contacting young people and they went, who are you? there has to be opt-in. So we ask that young people present or are supported to present with us. That being, they can walk through the front door, they can phone us, email us, WhatsApp us. They can do this with a support member of staff, but they need to be involved in that process. So as I say, we try and see them straight away, strike them while the iron's hot. So a young person may have been building up for months to ask for support. If we're not available to support now, we may lose them. If we're available in a month's time, they may have regressed. They may not be ready for that support anymore. So we try to see them straight away. Not always possible, but where we can, we do. We do have initial assessments, but we try to do this through conversation, or we ask them to complete it if they're waiting in reception, that kind of thing. Because what we don't want to do is hit them, especially in the first appointments, with a big list of questions. Do you do this? Have you done this? Question, 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 question. It needs to be a getting to know you, more informal conversation. So yeah, keep it informal, keep it approachable. In Blackpool, we're working on a tiers of need model, which is currently in development. So it's basically RAG rating, but with descriptors, so everyone across Blackpool can work in the same way. Are you ready for work now? Are you ready in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months or over? So if someone's within the 6-month bracket, we'll work with them. So the example there being, if someone's a full-time carer, daily drug and alcohol use, we would do a referral, get them to get that support. And when they're within 6 months, then we'll do that employability support. Because we're very much ourselves, we're employability. We're not pastoral, we're employability, to offer that support and that expertise, hopefully. So young people who access our service, they get regular meetings with an advisor, 1-hour appointments. The young person is always asked to go away and do something, so just try and keep them engaged with us. It's linked to the DWP UC appointments, so they're not coming in multiple times. They can come in, see the UC advisor, the work coach, and then come straight across to my team. Or any new young people who are starting the claim would see the advisor, and then straight away the work coach turn around and say, we've got these people here, they work with Blackpool Council, they work with us, they can offer you support around, do you want to go speak to them? We'll see them straight away. So yeah, we link those appointments, and again, with having the staff on site with us, it makes it much easier to do. My advisors are not desk bound. We encourage them to use our breakout areas. We've created a couple of breakout areas. They can go on walks, they can do online appointments, they can go to a coffee shop. Not always taken up on those offers, but having the breakout spaces away from the desk, making it a little less formal, seems to be working really well. And we'll work with someone for 6 months, no hard cap. If one of my team members turns around and says they're almost there, they need another month, yeah, that's fine. Because again, we aren't bound by the DWP contract. And we offer 6 months in work training support when someone goes into work and training. Very rarely gets taken up by a young person. Quite often they turn around and say, no, don't contact my employer. I don't want you involved. I'm here, I'm done it, with varying success. But the big thing is we offer time to get to know them, get to know where they are in the journey, where they're going to go. It's not a 10-minute appointment. It's dedicated time to them. So we want to see them at least every 2 weeks. We try to see them every week. If they want to come in every day, they can come in every day. But how this affects our outcomes, so we only get 1 outcome per person. Being a coastal area, seasonal economy, it's really important that we offer the extra support. So if someone does fall out of work, fall out of training, we will work with them again. We get no outcomes. It doesn't help our funding, but the whole aim is to support young people to that long-term sustainable appointment. So we're talking about this COVID generation. They're coming in, they're going to their first job. It was 2 or 3 jobs before I kind of got the hang of it. They're even further back. I'm not saying I was great, but yeah, they're even further back. So they need those extra opportunities to be able to thrive. So yeah, if it doesn't work out, they can always come back to us and we'll offer that support. So they could go to training, they could do a workshop, they could then go on to work. So as well as our own workshops, so we'll deliver workshops, all the usual stuff that you'd expect, employability support, CVs, application, looking at attitudes, behaviours, work placements, volunteering, all those kind of things my team can help with. We have other organisations on site. So I mentioned before Blackpool and Far College. So going forward on a Thursday afternoon, they'll have a drop-in for functional skills, including for 16 to 17-year-olds, which is absolutely massive. It's seen as outreach for them, so it's not a full study programme. They can come, get up to like it's usually young people from entry to level 1, so we can get them up to the level 1, so they're then ready to start accessing the local campuses. And with everything, some young people just don't want to access the college. They don't like it. They've been there. They've not enjoyed it. So it's a hand-holding way to get them back into that as well. We've got the Prince's Trust who come and they do regular explore sessions delivered from our site. They've delivered mindfulness from us as well. We've got Lancashire Women. They started delivery yesterday of Confidence Cafe for young women for the next 6 weeks. They're going to be doing similar for young men. We've got a local training provider called Skills Construction. They've done work across Manchester as well, Northwest. Now, they have done and they are still delivering their last traineeship. So that is being delivered from site. All the theory elements are delivered from us. And directly opposite the road from us, as part of the town centre regeneration in Blackpool, is the new DWP regional hub. So they're doing the theory elements with us, walking over the road, and they're getting the practical elements on an active building site. So it's just been a really good offer for young people who want to go into construction. Obviously changing with the traineeship funding changes. And we do the job fairs, career fairs, all those kind of things as you'd expect. On top of that, some of the things we've managed to get into place or negotiate, some of our wins. So we've managed to negotiate paid work trials at local hotels. So young people are given a paid work trial. They're put on rotation around the hotel, so trying different areas. So trying to get that experience. Where do they want to go? Where can we support them going forwards in terms of their aspirations and what they've experienced? We've got a local company called Smith's Hire who came in to do some speeches and some inspirational stuff, some site visits for young people. And just from that, they ended up creating and taking on 3 young people. 2 of them are absolutely flourishing within the organisation. And one of our bigger wins, working locally with Merlin. So we introduced them to our adolescent services who were involved in the Care Leavers Covenant. We've been offering advice and guidance and support, and Merlin have signed up to the Care Leavers Covenant nationally on the back of this. So any care leaver who applies for a Merlin job is guaranteed an interview. If they show that they're a care leaver, they get 2 free tickets to an attraction when they apply. And locally, Merlin are creating ring-fenced roles within each of their attractions. So hopefully next week we're going to get a Sea Life Centre role going live that is ring-fenced just for our care leavers. Sorry, not just for Blackpool Council care leavers, for care leavers to apply for. And also, one of the bigger wins, I think, is our local job centre is going through some changes. All youth referrals are going to the youth work coaches because it didn't always happen. The youth work coaches are all going to be sitting together in a dedicated area at the job centre next to the ICT facilities. And they're going through a rebrand. So they're taking some of our bright yellow, some of our colouring into there and making it feel a lot more informal. So there's some changes at the job centre based on the work that we've been doing with them, which is absolutely brilliant to see them embracing that. Did ask if I could pay for the paint and the vinyls, but we'll see how that goes. So ultimately, we're just trying to be that one-stop shop, conduit for young people where they get the support they need to take that next step, whatever that next step is. But yeah, sorry, I've absolutely been throwing loads of stuff out there, so I'll stop. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions or they want to contact them, please do.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So for the last 20 minutes of the meeting, I'm going to ask for a bit of multitasking from you all. Henry from ERSA is going to share a Menti page, and if I can ask him just to sort of scroll through the 3 slides over the next 20 minutes, and we can collect some responses from you all on that, because I think there's a lot of knowledge in this room, and it's important for us in our work to get that recorded. And then whilst we're doing that, we can have a bit of discussion. If you've got any questions for Brian, Gary and Andrew, stick your hand up or put something in the chat, and I will bring you in. So yeah, on here you should just be able to submit responses to each of the questions in the little sort of screen on your screen.
Sorry, Jack, I think I just need to, I don't know, can you see me entering passwords or not? Because I just need to.
No, I think it's come up for me. I'm not sure about for anyone else if we've got any nods going on. See if I can. Yeah, I'm putting a testing through now. Oh yeah, no, it seems to be working, Henry.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I can't see anything on mine, so I don't know how I'm going to change the thing. But
yeah, as well. Hopefully, it all comes through with you. But we're up with the first one at least, so we'll see how that goes. Any questions? Please put your hands up. Or even if you just want to tell us about your provision, obviously, like Rianne did earlier, I think I only was able to get in contact with people I already knew, but I'm sure that there's some people doing some really great work in youth hubs. So if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing, please put your hand up. Susan, if you want to come in, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to give a bit of an introduction really into what we're doing. We're funded by Sheffield DWP, specifically for a Send Youth Hub. And from what I've heard, I don't think there's many or any other Send Youth Hubs across the UK as part of this pilot or project initially. We're quite lucky to have the Send Hub because it's obviously very specific in terms of focusing on individuals with disabilities. We're an autism charity, so predominantly we work with neurodivergent adults, young people, those that have got kind of more specific needs around that. But opening up to all Send means that we are capturing those people that don't have a specific diagnosis, that maybe have a learning disability diagnosis or a dyslexia diagnosis as well. And we're able to kind of have that whole person approach as opposed to you have to have a neurodivergent diagnosis. For us and for the DWP locally, it's worked really well because obviously we're able to pick those people up that predominantly fall through that gap. And having the youth work coach within our building as well means that individuals that are very nervous about going into job centre, that are fearful of going into job centre, don't have to. So they're coming into our building, into an autism charity where they feel safe, and it's different from kind of obviously being able to go into job centre and feel very intimidated by that environment. The pressure's different. And us working very closely at work coach means that if someone's having a problem with the UC, we can just go across the room and talk to the work coach and kind of resolve those problems there and then. Because we all know how difficult it is to ring job centre and get hold of someone on the phone. It's almost impossible. So to be able to literally walk across the room and deal with all that for them in one hub is working amazing. From our experience, we've had lots of employability projects in terms of different individuals we've supported, but to have one specific for youth is a massive passion of mine. I'm actually a governor at a secondary school as well. And what we've found in terms of secondary schools is that a lot of people with special needs in terms of neurodiversity particularly don't have very good transition plans at the end of education. They drop off a cliff, they either go into education or they very quickly become neat, or they end up in education but go around a loop of education for many, many years until their EHCP runs out at 25, and then they're no longer eligible for youth projects, youth support, apprenticeships, etc. But to be able to pick them up at a young age, to work with colleges to reduce that transition gap, to have this project that is dedicated to picking up people at that early age is making a massive difference. Our hub's very bespoke. It's very one-to-one work that we do. We run some group sessions. We run social groups. We've got a social cafe that we're running as part of it as well, because obviously social confidence runs hand in hand with employability confidence. So it's not just about kind of looking at the job. I put a question on earlier around, is the 26 weeks going to be the limit for the new project? Because we want to open this up to people that can't get a job in 26 weeks. We all know how quick COVID went, and 26 weeks seems to go a lot faster nowadays than it did previously. We're all working a lot harder. We're all working, doing multiple things at once, and 26 weeks has gone before you know it. But actually for people with multiple needs, particularly SEND, there's a lot of youth with SEND that have missed out on work experience. They've missed out on those opportunities in education, and coming to these hubs means that we're picking that up. If the SEND hubs wasn't there, if there wasn't this opportunity, I hate to think what would happen to the current SENDs leaving education because they've had zero work experience or very limited employment contact at that point. And they have very little kind of dedicated careers guidance. It's quite scary how many young SEND people leave school with no CV, with no mock interview experience, and they come into us from scratch. So we are kind of keen to kind of continue that, and hopefully there'll be more Send Youth Hubs going forward with the new offer. But it is nice to be able to kind of specifically offer it, and having that specifically just for Send is important. Obviously, I'm keen to. I put my email somewhere in the chat, so if anyone does want to chat, I'm keen to kind of link up. And I think there was conversation earlier around kind of looking at how you learn from this experience and how you would develop the hubs going forward. And if there's a way of me feeding in from a Send background and Send experience, I'm happy to do that. So keen to kind of link in from that level as well.
Fantastic contribution. Thanks a lot, Susan. Yeah, obviously, if people are wanting to be contacted by each other, put your emails in the chat. I don't know if Brian, Gary, and Andrew, if you can. I know Andrew, you've already put your email in the chat, but I can quite happy to share your emails in a follow-up email that I put out to everyone following the meeting. Also, thanks for the responses that are coming in on Menti. They're sort of really useful and definitely things that we can build on. Don't know if there's anyone else who has any questions, discussion points, moans, anything. Please feel free to come in. Go ahead, Brian.
It may sound like a moan, but it's not. It's a bit of a constructive plea. Something that we've found a challenge increasingly as we've been running the Youth Hub over the last 3 years is just ensuring that the communication and the engagement of the Youth Hub at the local job centre operational level is as strong as it can be. Because we're funded through the Flexible Support Fund, I think there is a little bit of danger of the hierarchy of funding kicking in, and there are times that we found that the dedicated, supposedly Youth Hub work coach has not, we found out probably at very short notice that they're not attending the hub that day, but they're back on what they call next available appointments at the job centre. Now, I understand it, and there's no criticism here of our operational managers, because what I will say is they're in a very tricky position and they're trying to fulfill a range of competing demands, and they do it really well. But this is something that they're up against. And I think from a Youth Hub point of view, you know, we can kind of lose out here in terms of the food chain. So I think it's just, my point here, I guess, is that engaging with the operational managers in local job centres is constantly important, and that they see how the lives of their staff and what their staff are offering could only be made better by working well with the Youth Hub, particularly as we expand the range of young people that we're supporting, involving YECs, etc. But I do think that that's something that we really want to try and continually strengthen the operational stroke FSF delivery here in the dialogue.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. Great to see people getting in contact in the chat. That's really what we want to do with this forum. And I think today's been really productive, and obviously the Youth Employment Forum runs every month, but I think there's a sort of idea to make every other month about youth hubs. And I think particularly in light of what the DWP have said today, it's really important that the people with experience are at the forefront of that conversation, and that is the attendees today. So really great. Any last questions or points, or we might end up with all of us getting 10 minutes of our day back at the end of the meeting. Okay, well, finally, thank you very much. Firstly to Tammy, I know she's not here anymore, and the team at DWP. It was really great to have an update from you. To our 3 fantastic Youth Hub representatives, and for everyone who's responded on Mentimeter or contributed something either over the mic or in the chat. I think it's been a really productive meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next Youth Employment Forum next month, the details of which will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great rest of your days.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.